Hey everybody, this is Ryan. Today I'm going to show you how to make the scene that you see in front of you, which is a full 3D box inside of a 3D environment, something we do here at FFG. Just makes for a much cooler looking scene, a little bit more dynamic, and can be completely made in After Effects. So that's where we're starting with. That's where we're going to end up actually. So let's get this ball rolling, and I'll show you how I made this done. So we're going to start with a new composition. So you come down here to the little button, create new comp. It's going to open you a settings window. And we want HD TV, 720, 2997. So it's a 1280 by 720 composition at 2997 frames. Go ahead and hit OK on that. Let's check over our settings real quick. So there's our size. We want square pixels, our frame rate. And we're just going to do this at 5 seconds because we really don't need it to be any longer. Let's go ahead and name the composition Eldritch Box Awesomeness, I think is an appropriate name. Go ahead and hit OK. And now we have a new Eldritch Box Awesomeness comp up here in our file structure. I'm going to go ahead and move that into the My Comps folder, which is something I made earlier. I'm going to pull it right down into Comps, and there we're at right in there. So the other one I had Box Comp that you saw playing a little bit earlier, and now we have Box Awesomeness. So we also need to set up some other things. We need to make a pre-comp for our box. Let's see where my other ones are, where they ended up. So there's my pre-comps inside of here. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this one, that's unneeded. So I wanna make one of these. This is a comp based on the size of my box, which I will then bring inside of our final box scene. So since I know this is Box Awesomeness, I'm going to start with making my box. I'm going to start by finding the front of the box. If I double click on this, it'll open a viewer window here so we can see it. I'm going to go ahead and close that window. And I just pull this straight down to the little film strip where new comp was, and it'll immediately make a comp that's the same size as our box. Now I need it actually a little bit larger, so I'm going to go ahead and get to my comp settings, and that can be located where it's missing. If you held Command K, that'll bring it up, or you can go to composition settings right up there in the menu bar. You notice it made the comp, named it front. We want to call it Eldritch Box pre-comp 1. We need to make it a little larger. It made it exact, so it's 1,000 by 1,000. I want something a little bit more manageable, so let's go 1,500 by 1,500. So then you can see it makes space around. Everything else is good. We hit OK. And then it instantly pops my layer into the center of the frame. Let's go ahead and let's put our pre-comp in the regular boxes folder. So now we have it right there. I need to bring down the back, bottom, left, right, and top to match my front. Just highlight all those, drag them right in. Now everything's made. I'm going to turn all of this is the 3D button. I want to turn all of that on because I need these to be in 3D layers. Now the next thing I need to do is I need to have a null object, which is going to be something I can move around and rotate, and I can parent all these to this. So I'm going to go up to actually, I'm going to stay right in this window. Maybe not. I'll show you multiple ways to do this. So you can either go to Layer, New, Null Object, and it's going to create one for you. Or you can right-click down here, New, Null Object. They're both the exact same thing. They do it the exact same way. Now I want to make my null object a 3D layer. And you'll notice I'm not moving anything yet because I want everything to stay at the exact same spot yet. Now I'm going to highlight everything here. If I click on the first, hold shift, click on the last, it'll grab everything. And this right here is pick whip. So you want to grab one, and it's actually grabbing all of them because they're all highlighted. And I want to bring it up to my null. And there we go. And now everything's parented to this null layer. So if I press the R button, which opens up my rotation, I can rotate this around and it will actually rotate everything. I'm going to put that back to 0. Now to help me make this box, I want to actually view this from multiple angles at the same time. So I'm going to go to the one view here, and you'll notice it gives me a whole bunch of other ones. I'm going to go 2 on the vertical. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 on the horizontal. Get rid of those. And now I'm looking at the right side. I actually would like to look at the top. So where it says right, I can click top. Now be aware that this little updating is depending on which screen you're on, and you know that by these little yellow marks right there. So this one is my active camera. This one is my top. So I know my box is 1,000 size. Let's see the size of my left, for example. All I got to do is click on it, and right up here it tells me. So 234 by 1,000. That's perfect. I want to actually take my left down here and rotate it. So I hit my R, and I'm going to be able to rotate that. Make sure you see the little blue arrow here. I want to make sure they're pointing on the outside. It's not really needed. It will just make this easier. So I know this needs to be 90 degrees. So I'm just going to click in the box here, put it at 90. And I need to move it over the appropriate amount. So if I know my box front is 1,000 and I'm stuck in the middle, because where I placed everything, if you go ahead and click on your left and press P, that'll get you your positioning layer. And we know we need to do the Z, and we need it to be to the left, and we know it's 1,000, so it's gonna be -500, and that'll pin it right to the end. Let me zoom in right there, and you can see it's nice and stuck. We're gonna do the same thing with the right. Yeah, first press R to get my rotation. I'm gonna rotate that with the blue arrow going to that way. It's gonna be -90 this time. And then I'm gonna press P, gets me my position. And I'm gonna be able to slide that over to 500. So there we have our left and right set. Now, if you look at the null, and we're still on rotation, I can rotate that around, and you see the sides are pinned to the null, which is how I achieve this 3D box effect. Make that back to 0. So I need to move my front and back. Now I know my left right here is 234. I'm not gonna bother with trying to math the half of that. So just deal with it. I'm gonna go to my front layer. I'm gonna get my position up by pressing P. You can also press this little arrow, it's called twirly. That'll get you all of your stats for everything, but I just wanna see position, so I'll just press P. And I'm gonna drag this forward. Now I need to get this in the right spot. Now as long as I've clicked on this page, I don't need to be hitting the controllers. I know what layer I'm on, and since I'm looking at top, I can use the arrow buttons and move it. I'll press shift here to make it jump bigger spots. Then I can get it relatively in the right spot. A little off yet. There, now I got a nice tight corner. Let's look at where that position ended up. It's -117. So that helps me know that now I can grab my back. We'll position that and we'll put that at 117. And boom, the back pops into position. We'll double check our sides again here real quick using the null. And you see our side is incorrect to how the box is actually laid out. So we're gonna go ahead and, as you see you hover over, it shows you a quick outline of which side you're looking at there. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the right side there, and I need to rotate that so it's right. So I'm gonna press R to bring down my rotation. And on the Z, rotate it around. I'm gonna flip that 180. There we go, that's how the box looks on the store shelf. Now I'll go back up to our null object and spin that around. And we're looking at our left side. I'm gonna go ahead and spin that again as well, 180 degrees. All right, now something about After Effects and the way this works, I'll open up my rotation there, is the back is probably wrong. Let's check. It is indeed very wrong. So now we're gonna go to the back. Now this is an orientation problem that you can either do via orientation and flip it. This is helpful to do it this way because then once you start spinning things, you will use your X, Y, and Z rotations. But either one works, provided you create your own flow and you get everything working there. As you can see, I kind of do it on multiple things. It doesn't really bother me because it's all being done in this pre-composition. I'm gonna go ahead and save my project real quick. Put my null back to 0. Oops. Put it back to 0. And now I need to set my top. And you'll see that the top is below these. I need to switch this around. I want the top there, and I want the bottom there. Now my position is at 0, 0, 0 still, stuck in the middle of the box, and the rotation is wrong. So let's rotate that and get it to point up, and we know that's a negative 90. And let's position that. Now you remember our left and right, so as we position this, I can scale this up. I'm gonna go ahead and go to position. We know it's gonna be negative 500 because our comp is 1,000. Now let's rotate our box real quick, look at the top of that. That is in the correct orientation. Let's put our null back to 0. And the bottom. Let's go ahead and rotate that one. Oops. I want to do the X. Make sure it's pointing down. We're going to do that at a 90. And our position, again, is going to be 500. Now, the bottom we're going to actually mess with. And notice right now, by the way, I'm getting that hand and able to move my composition around just by holding the space bar. I need to be able to make a shadow out of the bottom of that. So let me close everything. Anything that's open, if you are not clicked on something, clicked off, if you press U, it will close everything. And if you had a keyframe set, it would show off all your keyframes. For example, if I had a position here and a position here, and then let's do a position on this one, and then again right there. I'll close everything, so if I press U, it reveals all the keyframes for me. But I don't want any keyframes, so I'm going to turn those off. So, my bottom. I need to be able to see a shadow, and since I'm on black, it's not really going to help very, very well. So I'm going to press this little transparency button right there. It says toggle transparency grid. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. You'll notice it only did it on this side. That's because this is the highlighted frame. Now my bottom, I know it's going to be a shadow, but I'm going to start with scale, which is S on the keyboard. Opens up my scale. And I'm going to enlarge that a little bit. But I don't like that the auto enlarging is, right, not how a shadow would be. So I'm actually going to grab the corner of the layer. And I'm going to just eyeball it to about there, right? Like, so it's a larger square, and you can see on this frame how it's going to look. Now that's obviously not a shadow, so I'm going to actually do some adjustments to it. So I can either click right on the layer here, right click, and I can go to Effect. I'm going to go to Color Correction, and I'm going to go to Levels. That's going to give me levels just like Photoshop, and I want to make that black, so I'm going to go all the way down. Now I need to make it blurry, so it acts more like a shadow instead of this solid black bar. Again, make sure I'm clicked on bottom. This time, I'm going to show you if I stay in the window where all the effects are, I can right click, and that immediately brings up my effects windows. I want to go to blur and sharpen. I'm going to go to fast blur. It's just something that blurs really effectively, and I'm going to start cranking up this blurriness. Let's say about 100. We're right about there. Let's make our square a little smaller there. So let's click on this window. Let's see our transparency. That ain't bad. Let's go back to this window. Let's click on our bottom and get that a little bit bigger, I guess. So this is just a little bit of help for once we get into the other scene. I am now very happy with how that's looking. I'm going to go back to one view right there, and let's check our rotation on our null. We got a left and a right, and everything's looking good. Very nice. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and actually make my composition a little smaller again, just to help it in its other composition. So I want to go to composition settings, and I'm going to make this composition, let's say 1200 by 1200. Yeah, this is just a little smaller. It's just, I'm saving 300 pixels in each direction, a little bit easier on the render time. All right, so now let's go back in and make our actual scene like we see right here. So I want to go in. I'm going to go to my Eldritch Box Awesomeness, which is the composition I set up to begin with. And I need a floor. I don't want to do anything with that box yet. I need to make my little world. So I already imported some texture elements. And I made a folder earlier. To make a folder, here's the create a new folder button. Bring it up. Just like Photoshop, I can start moving that around. Control Z undoes. I can delete. So in my BG elements, I have a couple textures here. I have this snazzy wood texture, and that will do for another video showing a card room. And then I have this wooden shed floor texture, and this one is square. So let's go ahead and bring that wooden square texture into this layer. Now, as you can see, it fills up the whole screen. It's rather large. That's great. I want to make that a 3D layer, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. Let's press the R button, and let's, oops, on the X, we want to make that -90. Now, notice we're looking at this damn thing straight on, which is actually kind of annoying, and it's not really helping us very well. So let's go ahead, but this gives me my starting point. Let's go ahead and get a camera in the scene. So I want to go to Layer, New, Camera. It's going to bring up these camera settings. It might automatically be set at the 1-node camera. We actually want a 2-node camera. This is going to allow us to, instead of just position and point of interest. So we want to make sure that's on a 2-node. 35 millimeters, probably just fine. We're not going to enable depth of field. That's something we can do later, and we're not going to lock the zoom. Millimeters is fine. Measurement film horizontal, everything looks good. Let's go ahead and hit OK, and it brings us in our camera. Now, we actually don't want to move our camera around. We want to do that via a null. So let's go ahead and go up to Layer, New, Null Object. That's going to bring that in. I'm going to go ahead and rename that to Camera Null. I like to name my nulls in all caps for what they are. It's a quick glance for me. I also always have my camera stuff set to red. It's always very easy. I want to turn on the 3D aspect of my null, and then using my pick whip, I want to go ahead and add my camera to my null. Now, why do I do it this way? This allows me to have a null object that can go left, right, which you can't see right now. So let's raise the camera up. And now let's click on the camera, press A. That's going to get you your point of interest, and you can look back down. But we need to bring that camera way up, so let's get it up. And now let's look back down, and then my null goes left and right. So my null is controlling my left-right axis, and if I want it to go to the right, I can then counteract with my point of interest, and it kind of acts like the way a camera would act. So, you know, it'll pan left and right, and as if it's on a tripod. So let's go ahead and undo all those. So this is the beginning of where we want to go, but we want to make like a little crate texture out of this thing. So let's go ahead and take our floor texture and let's duplicate it. And I did that using Command D. You can also, oops, right click and somewhere in here. Review, maybe it's in Layer. So let's check Layer real quick. Layer. Look at that. I don't know where this is. I'm so used to using the right click. Let's see where this is, because now I'm curious. Duplicate. It's under Edit. Ooh, look at that. That's all sneaky and snazzy. Well, I have learned the quick keys, so I just use Command and the letter D for duplicate. Before I actually proceed, and you'll notice I have two of these, I want one more null in here. So instead of going up to Layer, New, Null, I'm just going to right-click down here, New, Null Object. I'm going to move this under my camera. I'm going to make it 3D, and I'm going to call this Everything Null. It's like deep and stuff. And then I'm going to parent these using my pick whip to the Everything Null. Now, why do that? Well, I will actually end up linking everything to the Everything Null, and what it will do is be my rotational source. So now my null, my camera, let's put a position keyframe on the camera null. On the camera itself, let's put a point of interest keyframe. And on the everything null, let's put a rotational keyframe on the Y. I'm going to close that down with the U button. I'm just going to go forward a second in time or so. Let's rotate that a little bit. Let's raise the camera. Let's move the camera to the left, and let's angle the camera back to the center. So now it's creating a spinning turn while still maintaining looking at that center point. And that's all done with just 3 keyframes. That's why I do it the way I do it, because everything can get attached to that everything null, then your entire scene will always spin correctly, and your camera is only being controlled by a single null and your point of interest. It makes life so much better. So I'm going to click the little stopwatches here, which kills all the keyframes, as you can see. We need to keep everything about the same. And now we're going to go forward. So that duplicated one that I put on top, I want that to be my back wall, and I'm going to make a left and right wall with it as well. So let's go to my rotation. Let's go ahead and stand this layer up. Come on. I always get this backwards. Let's make this 0. There we go. Now I'm going to move it backwards in space. Now, just like my box, I need to be able to see this in multiple views. So I'm going to go ahead and go to 2 views horizontal, and this is giving me a top for my scene. There's my back wall. And there's my floor. So I'm going to go ahead and, that's shed floor. I'm going to go ahead and rename this back wall. I'm going to close everything down there because I don't need to see any of that. I do need my position on this though. So if my floor is right there, I need to make sure my wall is there. So I'm going to go ahead and raise that up and then bring it in. And let's zoom in and see that. See, now I can actually use my little controllers down here. I'm just clicking and holding in order to move this around. There, now that's a nice tight corner, and that makes this corner nice and tight. And notice I kept the rotational so the boards interlock, because I kind of want this to look like a crate when I'm done. Except all this dirt right here is actually grooving my mellow. So I'm going to actually rotate the floor, because I do like that. I'm going to rotate this on the Z to 180. But I want that dirt to be in the back. And this stuff on the back wall, I don't want to see it. So let's rotate that completely out of the frame and put it on the top. There we go. Now, that back wall, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that using Command D. And I'm going to make this the right wall. Let's go ahead and rotate that. So that's at a 90. Now, looking at this from the right as I was isn't going to work. So I want to go ahead and change this to the top. Now I can see my right wall and that it's in the wrong spot. So let's go ahead and pull this forward. A cheater way to do this is to click on your floor, press P to see your position, and you know you're at 0, 0, 0. My right wall on the position, I want it to be at 0, 0, 0, but now that dropped down. I'm going to go to 4 views to show you what I mean. See how it's down? So I'm going to go ahead and put that back at -1000. Boop. And now it goes right back up, and I want to move that to the right side. And that's probably going to be 1000. Yeah, I'm just going to guess. So there we go. Now we have that side. Now I need a left wall. So Command D or edit. Where was it? Where was it? File? Or duplicate. Edit, duplicate. All right, so edit, duplicate. Bink. And I'm going to call this left wall. If I can type. And let's go ahead and move that position. We know that's going to be -1000. And you'll see it. Bink. Jump right over. So now, close everything down using the U button. Everything is connected to that null. To my everything null. So if I press the R button, open up my rotation, and on my Y rotation I start rotating, you'll see that I have a box. And I'm inside said box. So it's a little bright. Let me go back to one view. Get that zoom. Use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out, just like most other programs. It's a little bright, so I'm going to actually click on my floor. I'm going to do a little bit of color correction here. So I want to go to my effect control, and it's currently empty. And I can simply right click, and I'm going to go to color correction, curves. And I want to go ahead and darken this down a little bit. Make it a little grungy, just a little brr, a little evil. Let's dip the right down. And liking that. A little brown for my taste, so I'm actually going to go right click again, go to color correction, and I'm going to go to vibrance. I don't want to desaturate it because I feel like that's very obviously to be seen. So I'm actually going to start with my vibrance and just dig into the vibrancy of the color, which is actually going to retain its saturation, but just make it a little bit different, right? So let's put this at -50. And yeah, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to start, I'm going to copy these. So I'm going to click curves, and I'm going to click the vibrance, and I'm going to Command C for copy. And I want that color on the rest of the walls. So I'm going to click the left wall, the right wall, and the back wall, holding Shift as I do so it gets, and then Command V to paste, and now everything's on there. And my room is looking pretty nice so far. Now we got one last thing, since this is, well, not one last thing, we got a couple things here. We got to bring our box in. So we need to go find our box, and we know that's in our comps. Nope, it's in boxes. Normally I make a folder called pre-comps, but that's up to you and however you want to workflow. I like files, I like folders, I like to keep everything the same. And here's our Eldritch box pre-comp that we made, and we're going to drag it right down just under the everything null. Bink. And you notice it comes in looking odd. That's because 1, it's not 3D yet, and 2, we need to click the little tiny sun. And what that is a pre-compose. And now it's a 3D box. It's referencing our other null and our other composition. So anything you do in that other composition will actually come into here. Now you'll notice our box is in the scene, and I can actually start rotating stuff around, which is awesome. Oh no, it's not. Why not? Aha. Because that's why we didn't attach our comp yet, right there, to our everything null. So while the everything null has a 0 rotational on everything, pick that up to our everything null. Bang. And then our Y rotation will work. It will reference, as long as we don't go through the side wall and the back wall, everything connects through to the other comp. As you can see, there's our box back. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back to 0. Now our box is obviously a little large, so I'm going to go ahead and shrink that. So just click on the box layer and press S. That'll get you your scale. Let's go ahead and bring that down. And now let's bring that box up in space so it's a little more right. Now, you can see their shadow is part of that pre-comp. And that's going to serve 2 purposes. 1, the minute it disappears, you know it's too low and it's not sitting in the right spot. So bring it up and boom, the minute it pops, now you're in scene. And that little blur is just helping ground it. If you want to be more precise, we'll go to our view. Actually, no. Yes. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, no, yes. Oh, you know what I mean. Let's go our 2 view horizontal. And on this side, I'm going to click in the window, get the yellow, and I'm going to put that to front. And I'm going to zoom in. And I'm going to find our floor, which is right there. And you can see if I click on the box, I can move the box all around. And I can make sure it's in the right spot right there. So now I know it's on the floor, and I'm pretty happy. If you use your scroll wheel while hovering over your view, it'll automatically jump to different views, something that you might not have known. Also, if you're trying to zoom in and you want something really cool, you're like, the tilde key, which is the key right under escape on the upper left of your keyboard, press that, and you will go to full view in whatever screen you happen to be hovering over at that time. You got 150 layers, you can tilde and just see your layers. If you want to just see all your effects, as long as you're hovering, not clicking, it'll just make that the full screen view. Let's go and put that back to active camera. So there we go. So that's looking pretty good. Let's start with this a little offset, because we want a dynamic shot. So I'm going to put that at 32. I'm going to keyframe that. Now I'm going to go to end. Now if you have a keyboard with the numbers on the right hand side, your home and end buttons. End will take you to the end of your composition. Home will take you to the beginning. So my end, I'm actually going to rotate that opposite. So now we have an animated scene with this box in it. But we don't want just a rotation because that's a little bit boring. So we're going to move the positioning of the null and the point of interest on the camera. So my position, I actually would like to back up a little bit because I like a little bit of a zoom. And I'm going to raise the camera. I don't want to raise it too much. Actually, I'm going to lower it because, dynamic, right? Dynamics are cool. Now I want my point of interest to be closer or in the center. Now to help you with the center, you can actually press the comma key. And what that brings up is your title safe used for NTSC. I like to use it because it has a little arrow right there to let me know if it's center frame. Plus it helps me compose my shots a little bit easier and keep some bleeds so things aren't bumping out of my composition. I'm treating it very much as if it was an illustration. It's just a moving illustration. So I like that as a starting spot. I'm going to position keyframe, and I'm going to point of interest keyframe, and then I'm going to go to the end. And I want it to be a little bit more dynamic, so I'm going to zoom in. And I'm gonna go down a little too close because it's clipping my box. I don't like that. I'm gonna go down even more. And now I'm gonna counteract my point of interest. Now you'll notice I keep unclicking these layers before I move point of interest. After Effects has this weird thing where if you don't unclick, sometimes if you move the position of one, it'll think it's clicked on the other one as well. So it won't release. Yeah, I like that. That looks pretty cool. Now we have this spinning move. Whee! I think that looks pretty neat. Let's go ahead and save that. And you notice I'm in my title safe and everything's all happy. So we need to jazz this up a little bit. One, I want a zooming camera. So let's go to my very end. I don't want to speed ramp my move and have it just stop. I like to have some drift at the end of that. So let's back up to a spot where I think it looks pretty, where it would be a neat place to drift from. You know what? That looks like I don't want to cut that. That looks funny. See how the seams line up? So I'm going to just move forward a little bit. Yeah, that looks nice. I'm going to set a keyframe on all three of those. Now, if I know I want my ramp to last a second, I'll put my timeline at a second. I'm going to grab all three of these keyframes, and I can just simply click somewhere, and they'll all highlight. I want to slide all of those over to where I think it should be. Let's go ahead and check that as a RAM preview. And I did that using the 0 button. You can also set that up here. You can preview and RAM preview. Let's see how that plays. Yeah, see how that speeds in and then comes to a stop and then has this drift. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Because now I'm going to make these, I'm going to use the U button to close those keyframes, then U to open it up again, because I only want to see the one rotation. I don't need to see everything else. Now I need to make these eases, so they'll ease in on me. So I'll highlight all three and I'll right click on one. I'll go down to Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease In. Now what that's going to do on my ramp, you'll see instead of a stop, it slows down. And it comes to a nice gradual ramp. But I still don't like that tiny little weird stopping effect that happens. So I'm going to change that too. I'm going to go ahead and unselect my keyframes and just select this one right there for position. And I'm going to grab this graph. This is my graph editor. If you play with 3D programs, you're used to this. And there's my graph for how that ramp is ending. Now I'm going to use my tilde key to go full screen. And that's going to show it a little better. And I want to actually smooth out this ramp. And I'm going to bring it down and make that curve a little less drastic on its drop-off. I'm liking that. I tend to like it just shy of being vertical, so right about there. Now, not leaving the graph editor, I'm going to click on Point of Interest. And I'm going to do the same thing. I have to highlight that keyframe. And I'm going to smooth that out a little bit. And now my rotation, you'll see, is not blocked right. You see how it breaks at an angle? I don't want that. I want to be able to have the nice smooth rotational stop. So I'm going to try and eyeball that rotational match. And that's probably pretty good. I'm going to hit my tilde key to escape that. And now I'm going to unclick the graph editor. And let's go ahead and RAM preview that again. And you'll see how it nicely slides into frame. There's not so much of a little jarring. It just kind of slows down and looks great. All right, now let's add a little bit of, this is looking pretty plain. So let's get some lighting effects and some other things going on in this scene. First off, let's create a vignette. That's just something that rubs the edges and sort of mimics what an actual camera lens will do. That's just something pretty and neat to look at. So we're going to start with a solid. So down here, we're going to go Layer, New, New Solid. And I want this to be black. it is. It's going to be comp size, and I'm going to call this vignette. Hit OK, and it fills the full screen. Now, you can either do this the hard way by trying to mask this and eyeball this, which is annoying, or just make sure you're set on your ellipse tool, and if you double click it, it'll automatically cut a mask to the exact frame size. Now, we want to be able to adjust that mask. Two ways to get to your mask on your vignette. You can either use the twirly drop down and then your mask drop down, or what I like to do, if you press M once, it's going to give you your base settings, but if you press M twice in succession, it gives you all your settings automatically. But either way, you can just use your twirlies to get here. So I want to subtract this mask because I want to see the middle. And boop, there we go. I want to soften this mask because otherwise it looks like that. So I'm going to say 150 pixels. Nice soft. But now it's encroaching far too much. So let's back it off a little bit. Let's say about there. That looks pretty nice. Nice soft. And we've got this clip where it's black. I'm going to actually bring that opacity down a little bit. Let's say about there. This is Eldritch Horror, so we can let it be a little heavy. Yeah, kind of liking that. As you can see, it just helps focus the viewer in. Actually, I'm going to bring that back a little bit more. 50 range. That's just a little bit of helping in the look there to make sure everything is like you're happy with it. I'm going to close up all my layers here. And what I want to do, I'm going to quit Firefox here. Was having music playing in the background, but I think it quit. It's disappointing because everybody loves classical, right? Like everybody? You guys like classical, right? Anyway, I want to jazz this up even a little bit more here. What do I got to do? Well, let's play with the scene a little bit. Let's go ahead and make another vignette, except this time we're going to do a layer, new, adjustment layer. I'm going to put that behind. And I'm going to call that vignette blur. Now, it does nothing where it is right now. You're like, why wouldn't I do that? So I'm going to right click on it, which opens up this. I'm going to go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fast Blur. I'm going to crank that up. Now, one thing you'll notice, if you get large enough, it'll start messing with your edges. So make sure you click the repeat edge pixels if you're using something like this. 32 looks pretty good. I'm going to go back up to my ellipse tool, double click it, gets me a mask, M twice, oops, opens my mask settings. I also want to turn that to subtract. Let's go ahead and feather that up, and then back it back down. And then bring that opacity down a little bit. And it's just something a little fun to throw into the corners to kind of, mess with the scene a little bit. I think it looks pretty. Doesn't work for everything. I feel it's more of a horror trope or dark fantasy. I probably wouldn't use that on, say, Netrunner, right? It just isn't quite. Netrunner's too clean of a universe, where Eldritch, yeah, I think it works pretty good. Now we got to jazz up the lighting a little bit more, so let's go ahead and add a light. I'm going to layer, new, light. Now, I want it to be a spotlight, much like screen. Let's leave the color white for right now. I'm going to make that intensity 100. And whatever the settings come in. We want it to cast shadows. We want the shadow darkness to be about 75. This is for rendering reasons. And I want my diffusion to be about 200. If yours are different, don't worry about it. You can tweak this setting later. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. As you can see, it's in a really horrible spot. I'm going to go back to my multi-view, my 2-view horizontal. It's showing me my front right now. I can just click and drag it up, and you can see how that is already affecting it. Now I want to go ahead and view my left, because I want that light to be in front of the box. And all I'm doing, oopsie, is I'm grabbing the light. I'm not using the actual direction, like if you hover over and hit Y, that's just the Y. I don't want that, because it moves my point of interest. I just grab the little circle, and then your point of interest will always stay where it is. Let's go back to the top. There's my light. I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to back my point of interest to the front because I want it to clip up. And I'm going to move it offset this way. And I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. Let's make that cone angle a little bit smaller. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm immediately going to put, I'm going to duplicate that. So edit, duplicate. I doubled my seam, but I can just grab, and I'm going to move that one as well. Now I'm going to double click it again. I'm going to make that intensity less, but I'm going to really increase that cone angle. And it's just enough to add some neatness to the scene. I want to make sure I'm hitting all those boxes. I think that cone angle is probably a little too big. Let's bring that down. I'm going to move this other one around again because it's not clipping this wall over here like I want. That's more what I want. I'm going to go ahead and go to front. So I think I'm going to lower this one, make sure it clips, and then I'm going to raise that point of interest so it gets under my back wall. I'm going to increase my cone angle a little bit. Let's make it a lot bigger. Actually, let's go ahead and turn that feather all the way up, because you know what? We can. We have that power. Yeah, pretty much liking that. Let's go back to one view. That's not looking bad. Looks pretty neat, but you notice the depth is a little wrong. So let's actually, and plus our box isn't really catching the light quite right. And it's not casting a shadow using us. That's because we didn't turn that on in our pre-comp. So let's go ahead and double click the Eldritch Box pre-comp. It'll bring that back up. The only layer we want to cast shadows is the front. If you turn them all on, it'll actually mess with it, and you get weird cross shadows where the box sides meet. So I'm going to go ahead and click on front. I'm going to drop down my twirly. I'm going to go to my material options twirly and cast shadows. I'm going to click twice, or click once to on, and I'm done. We can go back to our Eldritch Box awesomeness, and bing, now it's casting a shadow, which looks pretty darn neat. But it's still a little not depthy enough. So I need to blur things down a little bit. Plus, I just noticed I don't like that my box lines aren't matching up. So I'm going to click on that and rotate that real quick. Make that 90. That looks more like a box, but that also means that this side's wrong too. So let's rotate that. Put that at 90. Oops. See, that's what happens when you click the buttons too fast. I'm going to close all these. And close all these. Let me click that again. Sometimes I don't want to see that dirt. It's actually 270. After Effects, sometimes if you're going too fast, it wants to be funky with you and do all sorts of crazy stuff. And I notice I'm not seeing the back of my box, but for some reason I'm seeing the back of my box. That's just a little annoying thing. If I know my shot isn't going to be showing it, I'll just go over to my pre-comp where my box is. I'm just going to turn the back off. I don't need to see it. And then when I come back, it will be gone there as well. Now our depth is a little bit not where I want it, so I'm actually going to blur some stuff down a little bit. And I'm going to do that with another adjustment layer. So I want that adjustment layer to be behind the box, but in front of my walls. So I'll just click on the left wall, and layer, new, adjustment layer. And I'm going to blur the, oh, you'll see something. Our shadows went away. See that? That's because layer order counts. So my wooden shed floor is now going to go above that adjustment layer. Nope. Looks like it's got to be above everything. So that means I can't use it. Now that is something you have to pay attention to every time you make stuff in After Effects, is layer order matters. And that's really annoying. So let's go ahead and just delete that layer. And I'll do it the old-fashioned way. I'll click on my back wall. I want to blur it out a little bit. So you notice my effect panel came up. You might still be seeing your project. You can go click right there. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to go to my... The last thing I used was my fast blur, so it's located right there. But it is in blur and sharpen. Fast blur. I know I want my edges to repeat. And we're going to just bring that up a little bit. Not much, not much. 4 looks 4 looks okay, but a weird seam. We'll have to figure that out. Let's see if I can get another adjustment layer in there. See what happens to my layer order. Yeah, see how it breaks those shadows? Really annoying. It just sort of happens. But that's not bad for the blur. I have a solution for that. So let's click that back wall. Let's click fast blur, Command C to copy, and let's put it on the left and the right as well, just to help with the depth of field. Now, how do I get around that stupid thing that's happening there? Well, I'm going to do another adjustment layer. So layer, new adjustment layer. I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to mask it, but I'm going to make it a 3D layer. And I'm going to attach it to my everything null. Make that 0. Now we'll make it 90. Sorry. I'm having issues. You'll see that didn't work either. What are we going to do? Let's delete that out. We'll get our shadows back. This might be one of those where we just kind of deal with it. The other solution to this is to go above everything. And we'll make an adjustment layer above my camera null. Layer, new, adjustment layer. Let's go ahead and blur, right-clicked, blur, fast blur. Repeat those pixels. Let's make it 5. So that's clipping what I want to do. And let's do that to make a mask. M twice. Let's subtract it. Let's feather it at like 200. Right, and then I'm going to double click there, which gets me in my box just like in Photoshop. And I'm going to make this thing big. I'm going to clip through the top of that box there. Actually, I'm going to put it right about there. As you can see how my blur is hitting. And if I put my box above it, my shadow goes away. That's a bad thing. So I can do this. I'll duplicate Command D, my box, and put one above the adjustment layer and keeping one below. And since they're masked in the exact same area, you won't actually see them interacting with each other. So one is blurry behind the other. You can sort of see it there, right? If I turn that off. But it's also where my shadows are. So I'm actually okay with that. Now we're a little dark on the box. We have a little too much because it doubled the shadows and everything. So that isn't a good solution either. So let's go ahead and get rid of that adjustment layer. Let's put it down behind the walls. It's not really doing anything. Yep. So this is to show you how it's affecting below. That's my framing. It's just gonna have to go away. If I wanted to take the time to hide those edges, I could actually put in some blurs. But I think this is actually looking pretty good for what we have. Let me press U to reveal my keyframes. And I'm actually pretty happy with how that looks. This is just supposed to be a generalized idea of how to make these scenes work. And I think right now, as a box goes, this is a pretty good one to do. One last thing, if you don't want your shadows to move around, as you can see they're moving, with that, go to where the first keyframe where you put your lights in. You can actually go ahead and just parent those to your everything null as well, and they're going to swing around the scene, thus keeping your shadows cast in the same spot and just being a little bit better. And that back wall is actually really annoying me, so I'm gonna go to that back wall, and I'm gonna right click. I'm gonna go color correction. I'm gonna go to exposure. And I'm going to bring that stupid thing down a little bit. Just so it's not fighting with the other things. I can bring it down even more. Anyway. As a rough estimate, for how this works, go ahead and press ramp preview here. We'll see how this ramp looks, how the speed looks. Now, I have a little sliver on this box right here I could clean up. I know that happened when I trimmed my box in Photoshop, and that'll be for a later video of how I got these sides to be what they are. But that's pretty much it. That's how I get the 3D box in the scene. Let's go ahead and shorten this. I'm going to press N because this is all rammed, but that isn't. N will shorten my timeline. Go ahead and ram preview that. And that's it. That's pretty much how I make these 3D boxes, how it's running around in a scene. It's very quick. Once you get used to it, it's much easier to put together and make really cool stuff. So yeah, next time I will do a card room shot, which is the exact same type of thinking, except with a bunch of cards from a game, so you can have them parallaxing over one another. Really, the complexity of the scene is up to you for how much you want it to go. And yeah, cool. Check for the other videos, and if you have any questions, ask anybody in the media department. Thanks, guys.